Welcome back. On today's show, we're talking to two young men, twins in fact, who are among the youngest best-selling authors in the world. Jyoti and Suresh Guptara are co-authors of The Insanity Saga. Their first novel, The Conspiracy of Calaspia, was originally completed when they were just 11 years old. Now let's get back to our discussion. And Jyoti, I was asking you about your times, schooling yourself when you decided to go full-time as a writer at 15. How did that affect your relationship as twins in terms of how you sort of worked with each other when you were like in different environments?
Right. Well, Suresh went to boarding school in the UK. So for 4 years, I was in Switzerland and he was in England. And it was tricky because we'd have to send the book via email to each other and chat over Skype and MSN. And then in the holidays, when he came home, he would complain that he didn't have any holidays because as soon as he landed at the airport, I would be telling him, you've got to edit these chapters and read this and so on.
Yeah, it's interesting also.
But as for our relationship...
Go ahead.
I think I actually appreciated his company more when he was back because we weren't seeing each other every day.
It's interesting to note the other activities that you're both involved in. I mean, I know you're both youth ambassadors for a partner organization of the United Nations, and you actually donated 1,000 copies of the Calaspia Conspiracy to inner city children. Tell me about the Calaspia competition which you set up to promote literacy and reading.
Yeah, well, that was actually not really organised by us. It wasn't our idea. We just, when it was Dr. Vishal Mangalwadi and 3 companies who got together and had the idea for this, and they wanted to use our book to be, I suppose, the vehicle for this competition. I mean, we were delighted. So that's why we donated 1,000 copies of the book to inner city kids in LA, so that they would have the chance to have the book, read it, and participate in the competition, to have a chance which they otherwise probably wouldn't have.
We got to go to LA and promote this, and these are kids who don't have any books at home, some of them, and certainly wouldn't buy any. And it was really, I guess we learned a lot more than they did when we went to schools in Watts and got to read to these people.
How did you find that experience touring around the USA? I mean, after being in Europe for so long.
Well, we got to hit the East and the West Coast, and we had a couple of interviews. And in LA, we got to go to probation as well. So there were 200 juvenile delinquents. And the guy who introduced us, he had tears in his eyes as he did so because no one cared about these guys. They just, wrote them off. And so that was really touching for us, actually. And it was really nice to be able to talk about creativity and just to sort of expand the horizons about what one can do, creatively. Now,
it's interesting because J.K. Rowling was given a lot of credit for boosting literacy with the Harry Potter books because of the nature of the stories. Right. So many more people, so many young people started reading when perhaps they might not have been so interested. Have you had that kind of feedback that, again, your book has encouraged young people to read more?
Well, I've heard from a lot of people that we know, especially back home in Switzerland where we live, that, oh yeah, you're the guys who wrote a book, aren't you? Oh, okay, in that case I'll probably read your book, from people who don't normally read books. So I suppose that in itself is a little encouraging.
But actually we've heard a lot more than encouraging people to read who don't otherwise, that people are writing. So apparently we've inspired quite a lot of other youngsters to start writing books, which is fun.
What sort of books
I hope they don't have any illusions about publication.
Well, what sort of books did you read as youngsters? You were saying that you obviously were reading quite a lot and interested in stories, but what were the first sort of things you started picking up and reading and had some real idea of what you were reading?
Well, it started with things like Postman Pat, actually, our elder siblings and our parents would read them to us. And then it quickly progressed to fantasy. It wasn't always fantasy, but it had to be something with adventure in it.
Yeah, exactly. The Swallows and Amazons by Arthur Ransom.
Yeah.
And
Biggles.
Yeah.
The World War pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah, general adventure books. And again, books which were a series, so then we'd have the same character and he'd go on different adventures. That's the sort of thing which we enjoyed as well. I suppose that's reflected in the Insanity Saga, again, that it's an entire series.
And in terms of what you read now?
Yeah, generally we just... Yeah, what we read now is...
We try to read as widely as possible, so not just fantasy. Especially the classics, and we're really trying to learn as much as we can from them as young developing writers. And with every draft of the book we saw how much things changed, and I hope we're going to get to a stage where we've got our own style which is unique and mature.
When you look back on what you wrote, those first drafts, and of course you've changed a lot since that time and you've become older, when you look back at that critically, how does it look to you?
Terrible.
Yeah, really bad.
Well, it's interesting to see what's stayed. You know, in the first draft of the book, the plot is essentially the same up until they reach the capital, Omar, but it reads like a synopsis. So there's hardly any description. There's not much dialogue, and it's really strange.
Yes, it is a strange experience reading the first few drafts of the book again, because the whole time you're thinking, oh, I'm really glad that I changed this, really glad that we got rid of this sub-thread, and that we improved this, and that we decided to change this character slightly. But it's still quite annoying as well to think that we wanted that to be published when we were that young.
Yeah, it's painful.
Now, of course, you know, nothing stays in just one medium anymore. Something that's a book becomes a movie, it becomes a video game, and so on. And considering how, you know, well the books have done for you, is there any interest in it going to the movies, you know, into a movie and becoming a video game?
A lot of people have said that after they've read it, that it would make a really good movie, but we haven't heard anything concrete from any publishers or anything yet.
Yeah, our literary agent is in a couple of negotiations, but I don't think there's anything. We can't tell anything anyway. But in India, the funny question is always whether we're going to have a Hollywood or a Bollywood version of the film, and we always say both because there'd be such completely different renderings of the story.
Yes, I mean, in Germany we've already got the audio version of the book, and that is again another interpretation really of the book, and it's slightly abridged because it would be far too long otherwise. And hearing the actor reading out these voices is quite a fascinating experience, because a lot of the voices are really, really good, but some voices are just slightly different, and you would never have expected it to be like that. But then you think, actually, no, it really fits. So we're looking forward to when a film or computer game or something like that comes out. And of course, when the computer game does come out, we will certainly play it, try to anyway, if you have time.
Now, how did you cope with those months of traveling when you were doing the book tours and stuff? Because I mean, for young people, it's quite demanding to have to go through all that, and you know, and it was across quite a few countries.
Yes, after 50 readings in German, we were really sick of our book, to be honest. And you tend to answer the same questions, you know, how do twins write a book together, and all these kinds of questions. And it was really tiring.
Yeah, but a lot of the time when you're actually there and you're doing the reading, the audience is very different, and you can get some feedback from the audience, and that makes the whole process a lot more enjoyable. And it's then afterwards in the evening, when you finished the reading, when you finished all the questions and meeting everyone, that's when you suddenly realize how absolutely exhausted that you are.
Yeah, but it was worth it. I mean,
definitely.
We got to sign skateboards and meet loads of interesting people, so I'm very happy the way things have developed.
How do you think you two have matured as writers? Now, I know, Jyoti, you're doing it full time, and Suresh, you've taken a year off from after your A-levels to concentrate on the work. But how have you both matured as writers?
I think for me, being aware that now what I actually write is going to be published. I mean, for these 3 books that most publishers have signed us up for so far, you know, these words that I'm writing, people are actually going to read that, and that, in a way, you feel this responsibility towards your reader to do the very best that you can do. Because while we were still wannabe authors, there wasn't that pressure, because there wasn't that certainty that people are going to read it. So now you really need to be self-critical and see exactly that you can do your best.
But that perfectionism was there from the beginning. I mean, that's why there were 10 drafts of the first book. Yeah.
Is it sustainable?
As for myself,
go ahead, Jyoti. Go and tell us your.
Sustainable. I think we're going to be learning a lot actually in recent times, because when you're a teenager, you know, you learn so much anyway every year, and now that we're nearly 20,
not quite.
I think we're going to start, you know, learning different things actually.
That's what I was wondering, if there were more stories,
I don't know what yet,
more stories waiting to get out. I mean, do you see yourself going into other styles?
Definitely. Oh yes, we've got many ideas for other fantasy works and other non-fantasy works as well, and we're itching to get writing on them. But we have to finish the 3rd book in the series first, because we have deadlines for that.
Now, of course, you've written together up to now, but do you see yourselves ever writing individually? Do you see yourselves ever doing sort of solo projects? Does that ever come in?
I'm afraid that's inevitable, because Suresh is going to go to university, and I'm not so sure yet. I'll probably stay at home and continue writing, so I'll have to write a couple of books on my own, and Suresh will probably, I'm hoping he'll be a bit slower than me, since he's got university. It'd be embarrassing otherwise. Yes.
Yeah, there definitely is plans for us to write our own things as well.
And maybe some other projects together in future as well, aside from Calaspia.
And would it go on to anything else? I mean, were there any other interests you have? Just thinking about it, beyond the writing, is there anything else you'd like to take up?
Oh, we'd like to make films and produce music CDs. There are all sorts of
loads of things.
Crazy dreams.
I mean, generally, though, what we want to do is something creative, an expression of creativity.
Well, you've both done incredibly well from starting out from the age of 11, so I congratulate you both and thank you for being with us.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having us.
Pleasure. And thank you for being with us. Remember to catch us at our new show timing of 20:30 GMT from next week. We'll see you then. And any comments or questions to riz@aljazeera.net. See you next time.